All right, so now we do have, I just want you to be prepared because this is going to be some really interesting information for a lot of you, especially that, well, I don't want to take any thunders. Let me just go ahead and introduce the Contra Costa Environmental Health Team. It's Kristian Lucas, who's the Director of Environmental Health, along with Veronica Burell, who's the Acting Assistant Director of Environmental Health, and they've got some really interesting information to share with you. So please join me in welcoming them, please. Thank you.
Slides. I can probably do this without them, but it's going to be way more interesting if you have something to look at. Well, I guess before we get started, first I'd like to thank George for extending the invite to us and allowing us to present to you guys today. The program that we're hopefully going to have slides for is one that we're really excited about and just started this year. I'm glad that we're following our colleague Susan. We are, both Veronica and I represent the Environmental Health Division, which is a sister. Can you hear me? Better? Cool. I just don't want to boom things out. But environmental health is a sister regulatory agency within the health department. And so it's really nice for us to come to a venue like this to talk with all of you, because we are more on the regulatory side of things and making sure that people are getting access to safe and healthy foods. But to be able to connect our customers and clients that come see us for their permits to those of you that have some resources that might benefit them as well. There we go. Excuse me. So my name is Kristian Lucas. I'm joined by my colleague, Veronica Burell. And like I said, we both work at Environmental Health. And today we're here to talk about our brand new micro enterprise home kitchen operation pilot program. That's a bit of a mouthful, so I will refer to it by its acronym, which is affectionately called AMICO. There we go. So we have put together a brief presentation for you today just to talk a little bit about what MICOs are. Veronica is going to provide you with some examples of the types of foods and other things that you will find in a MICO. I'll highlight some community benefits, or at least those with which the health department believes are going to hopefully be community benefits. And then Veronica will finish it off by talking a little bit about the pilot program in general. And then, of course, the top of most people's minds when we talk about this are the logistics around fees, especially in the type of economy that we're in now. So we'll get right into it. So what is a MICO, you might be asking yourself? Well, it's essentially a home-based micro restaurant that allows for dine-in, pickup, and delivery services by local entrepreneurs who come to us to get their permit. These MICOs were originally created via Assembly Bill 626 that was signed into law back in, I believe, September of 2018, although don't hold me to that. And then there's been some subsequent cleanup language by our state legislature, various bills that have passed, the most recent being Assembly Bill 1325, which did a couple of really good things. It amended the meal limitation. It increased it to 30 meals per day and a maximum of 90 meals per week for these types of businesses, as well as raised the gross annual sales limit from where it was, which I believe was 30 meals per day and 60 meals per week, up to, or I mentioned 30 meals per day and 90 meals per week, but also the gross annual sales limit went from $50,000 maximum to $100,000. And you might be wondering, well, who's going to look at these things? Well, when people come to us to apply for these permits, that's something that our office, through the application process, will be verifying the meal limitations as well as the gross annual sales limitations.
All right, and sorry. So to add to that, so MICOs, before MICOs, we actually had cottage food operations, and so that was active within our county and the cities for a number of years. But that was a very small-scale type of home kitchen that allowed baked goods like your cupcakes, your muffins, your spices. But what this is, what MICOs is essentially what you know as a restaurant, you know, cooking, whether it's tacos, tamales, lasagna, what have you, at home. at the residence, whether it's in unincorporated or incorporated parts of the county. So as you can see, these are some examples, but the only limits in terms of what they can serve is something that they can cook and serve on the same day. So they shouldn't really be cooking it the day before. That lowers the risk. And then there's some exclusions that have higher risk. They shouldn't be doing homemade cheeses, homemade yogurts, homemade ice creams, or any raw oysters. The risk increases with those. But for the most part, the variety of menus that they can have is quite expansive. So this really opens up the opportunities for people needing to have a business from their home, something that, you know, allows them to have an extra income.
As I mentioned, Contra Costa Health believes there are going to be many community benefits, or hopefully there's going to be many community benefits that come from these MECOs being introduced throughout the communities in the county. Most significantly for small-scale home cooking operations, again, throughout the county. We hope that it's going to encourage existing informal home food operations to become safer, because that's our bread and butter in environmental health, as well as legalized. As well as allowing people to learn the basics of what it takes to run a small-scale food operation, which we heard from the Small Business Development Center. And in fact, we'd love to connect with you to be able to sort of shuttle some people your way that have these questions, that ask us, but we don't necessarily have the resources to provide to them because, again, there's others here that are better at doing that. As well as enabling, and this is an important one, family members to continue to provide existing in-home care to either friends or family members while still being able to generate income to support that family unit. As well as creating another pathway to supplement family income, which of course in this day and age with the rising inflation that is sort of prevalent throughout our country is something that's very important. And lastly, we hope that it provides some additional food service options in remote locations, as well as known food deserts that are sprinkled throughout our county.
All right, so this program is actually a 2-year pilot program. It started as of July 1st this year, 2024, and it'll continue on for 2 years. And we are using this pilot program to test out to see, you know, is this a benefit to the community? Are there any additional outreach, education information that we need to give these operators, applicants, more education so there's no nuisance around the different neighborhoods that we have. And then throughout this pilot program, any feedback that we receive from the applicants, from the cities, any agencies, any of the neighborhoods would be appreciated. But for this 2-year program, the initial permit is $696. The renewal, so every permit after that would be $345. And those fees are prorated. So our permit year starts from March until the following February. So if they start in the middle of the year, it will be half of that. And in terms of environmental health, if you want any information about home kitchens, whether it's MECOs or cottage food, you can check out that QR code or our website there. But essentially, our purview is we look at their operations. It's not on the same level as a restaurant. We're not looking for commercial grade, you know, equipment there. Obviously, these are residential kitchens, and we understand that. So our first permitting inspection is just making sure that we understand their menu. They get some education from us in terms of food safety techniques. We offer them the permit, and then we do 1 annual inspection for that year. We may go out for complaints if we receive any complaints. That is also there. And then also, we've had some workshops this year. We'll be offering more workshops in 2025 at our office in Concord, but also throughout the county in different areas throughout the county where we try to help the applicants figure out if this is a good business opportunity for them, and then we try to connect them to different services too. There's a nonprofit down in SoCal that helps them, gives them a 6-week workshop, and then there's a little grant funds that they're able to give them towards their permit, towards marketing, towards equipment or ingredient costs. But as we do that, we've been collecting or connecting with various agencies too. So if you find that this is a good connection for you, please reach out to us, because we would more than love to offer that to the applicants.
And I think just to add, I probably should have started with this, but Veronica reminded me of it now. The whole idea of these micro enterprise home-based kitchen or businesses are essentially to provide sort of an entryway and a pathway into that food business landscape that is all around us. But it's a very capital intensive and sometimes fickle industry. And so this is a way that allows people at a relatively low cost to reduce some of those barriers to entry and be able to learn some necessary skills, or maybe even further develop those skills that they might already have, whether it's something that was imparted from a cultural standpoint, or just skills that they've learned over the years. It allows them to explore those skills and actually generate some income using existing things that they might already have. So we're really excited about it, and I believe that's the end of our presentation. So we'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
We got questions.
I got so excited looking this up, and I maybe missed this, and I apologize. Is there a list then of those that are considered MECOs? Did you say that?
I did not, but that's a great question. And in fact, I was just emailing some of our folks in IT like yesterday. We have developed that, and it's going to be put on that website that you looked up. It's just not quite there yet. But yes, you will have a way to look up those home kitchens on our website here very soon, maybe even as I'm talking to you.
That'd be great. And the other question I have is, has there been any discussion then, obviously, with partnering on Uber Eats, any of those, because they're doing this in the home. Obviously, I'm trying to envision how they're distributing the food afterwards.
Right, that's a wonderful question. So that is actually a restriction within the California State Food Code. Uber Eats and those types of commercial delivery systems are not allowed for most part of these home kitchens. If they do want to have a different kind of third-party app, there's certain ones that the California Department of Public Health has approved to market certain home kitchen operations, but that is actually a restriction within the food code.
And if I could just add real quick, I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that like a employee of a microenterprise business, food business, can deliver that food on behalf of that particular business. So they might not have access to the Uber Eats and the DoorDash that we're all familiar with on sort of a commercial basis, but they still have that delivery option.
This is coming, from questions I get from small restaurants that have, storefronts. They've got the hood, they've got the Eco Lab, they've got all the, extra costs. And, I've done a little bit of homework on the MECO's kitchens, and I've sat in on some training over at the Contra Costa office. But the thing I didn't realize is it's a pilot program. What does it judge it? Because the question I'm getting, unfortunately for businesses, is they're going to step into a MECO's kitchen. They're going to leave their rent, they're going to leave their Eco Lab, they're going to leave their hood costs, and they're going to step into a MECO's kitchen because they don't think anybody's going to really regulate the 30 meals. And I know there's tons of MECO's kitchens that aren't certified right now. I'm not naive, but it is a burden on current restaurants to know that this is a new competition for them, and some of them are going to choose to go that route. So I want to know what determines the pilot program as being successful, because I would hate for someone to step down and then we no longer have these. And I would also like to know what kind of regulations are put on the home kitchens as far as especially pest control. Restaurants bring pests and vermin. So those are my two questions.
Yeah, great. And thank you for bringing that up, because I think, you shared a concern that is one that, we've seen ourselves and we've heard about ourselves. I think in terms of what it looks like for these types of businesses long term, the idea, as I mentioned, is to create a pathway into what can be a very capital intensive arena. And so this is a way that allows, small business entrepreneurs to at least test the waters out. The things that you mentioned are, there are things that we regulate on a daily basis when our staff go out and do these inspections in food facilities, whether it's for those hoods, whether it's for the various pieces of equipment that people have, the sinks, the pest control, all of that. There's a different set of rules and regulations for those commercial types of businesses, as you might expect, right? There's a higher volume of food. There's the higher probability that things might go wrong and might affect a larger number of people because of the number of people that these commercial type businesses might serve. And so there's a different set of rules. For the microenterprise home kitchen operations, again, it's a state law. And so the state legislature added some additional rules and requirements within the health and safety code specifically for these types of businesses. It eliminates the need for them to upgrade things, to shell out more money in order to make themselves be like a restaurant. But nonetheless, many of the same requirements from a food safety standpoint, from a pest control standpoint, are still applicable even in a small home-based business. And so we, as Veronica had outlined, as part of our program, even though it is a pilot program, we're still doing inspections per that permit. We don't placard like a commercial restaurant. You're probably familiar with all of those red, yellow, green placards that you see in restaurants that sort of says, how a facility might have performed the last time we were there. Those are not something that is applicable to Amico, but they still have to get the permit, they still have to get the inspections, and they still are required to uphold a lot of the same standards that a commercial type of business has, including pest control, as you mentioned. And that's one of the things that we're going to be investigating when we're out there, in addition to responding to complaints from the community. So if a community member decides that, maybe there's, maybe they are seeing an increase in pests or things of that nature, they can call our office and we will respond out and we will investigate those just like we would for a commercial type of business. And I've been talking so much that I can't remember the second part of your question, but if you could ask that.
What determines the success of the pilot program?
Yeah, I think it's the number of permits that we issue. Like, are we able to actually get these permits and get people, into this particular program? Some of that is due to the outreach that we do, which we've been doing pretty much ever since the inception of this earlier this year. We're here today talking to all of you, hoping to sort of extend that out amongst all the circles that you interact with. And then it also comes down to the feedback that we get from local agencies, local code enforcement agencies that might be, impacted by these types of things. We want that feedback. In fact, earlier this year, we had put together a meeting, and you might have attended that meeting, where we had talked to local agencies about how to get in touch with us, because when we eventually have to go back to our Board of Supervisors following the conclusion of this pilot program, we have to make a recommendation on whether or not we believe that the board should continue or not. And so we want to be able to provide them with as much information as possible from as many areas of our county as possible. So if there are agencies like yours or any of yours for that matter, please let us know. We want to hear that information, especially if there's complaints related to what you're hearing about these types of businesses. That will all be included in the report that we eventually make back to our board. Again, to provide them with as much information to make the best decision possible for us moving forward. Did that answer your question? Yeah, perfect. Great.
I had a question, and then depending on the answer, I may have a follow-up question. So just so I understand how Amico would work, it would be more than just utilizing your residential kitchen to prepare food and then deliver it somewhere. It would also include options for having customers come to the house, eat inside the house, in the front yard, in the backyard, as sort of a restaurant being run out of the house. Is that correct?
Correct.
So then the second part of my question is, because it's a very interesting concept, and it goes against the grain of 100 plus years of zoning in the United States, right? You normally have your residentially zoned areas, you have your commercially zoned areas, and they're somewhat separate. You have mixed use areas as well sometimes. But this means that if you live in an exclusively residential area, your neighbor could open up a restaurant in their house, right? So are there any restrictions on whether or not homes can do this if they actually share a property line with the adjacent home, versus there are some homes that are a little bit more isolated or far apart from the adjacent homes or the closest homes to them? And I guess this would be part of what is then assessed, right, at the end of the 2-year pilot program, is whether or not this does become an issue. Like if my next door neighbor opened up a restaurant next door, that would be very interesting for me and my family in terms of the noise, the smells, and all of the additional cars that would be coming to visit this restaurant next door to my house.
Great question. So that is actually also addressed in the California Food Code. So within the Food Code, it says in terms of zoning, it should remain as a residence, even if they open up this MICO. So it stays as a residence, and fire and building code, those codes still remain as a residence. It doesn't get bumped up into a commercial zoning or facility. And then in terms, I mean, same as we said before, and it sounds like you reached to that same conclusion. If there's any problems with your neighbor having this kitchen, noise complaints, traffic complaints, nuisance, obviously please let us know, please let the city know, and then that's when we go in and address it. All the feedback that we get at the end of this 2-year pilot program will be collected and then given to the board.
Thank you. And real quick on the 2-year pilot, I just want to confirm that let's say the pilot is not renewed, or the project is not continued at the end of the 2-year pilot period. Does that also mean that does that only mean that new permits would not be approved, or does it also mean that the existing permits that had already been approved would expire?
Question. The permit, so at the end of the pilot program, we could not issue any new permits. The existing permits would be allowed to be, to continue until their natural expiration. But every time somebody wants to open up one of these businesses or renew, as you saw from one of the slides that we provided, they have to reapply. And so we just wouldn't reissue a permit once that pilot program were to expire. And then I did just want to add on to the previous question that you had, and you sort of hit on, and it also addresses kind of what you had said about sort of, what happens or what makes the pilot program a success. And honestly, we want to hear all of those types of things, whether it's from a zoning agency, whether it's from a code enforcement agency, because we understand that having these home-based kitchens sort of sprinkled throughout our communities will or potentially might cause problems. And this is all good information that we need to be able to share back to our local decision makers so that an informed decision can be made. And so, yeah, I wanted to
and last and final, just a clarification. So the expiration date of a permit would be what, 2 years? So you get a permit, it lasts for 2 years?
They're annual permits.
Annual, got it.
Right. So whenever it gets issued, it expires the end of February of whatever the next year is. And so that same thing would happen in the case of, when the pilot program expired.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? And it's good you got your contact information. I'm sure our viewing audience may have some questions or comments or thoughts. Was there another question? Oh, right.
What's the general cost estimate? Let's say if I want to open one tomorrow, how much should I invest in my kitchen, grease trap, passing inspections? Do you have a general cost for opening up in passing the permit process?
We don't collect the cost that it would take to do the full business at a home kitchen. There are some nonprofit groups like the one that we had mentioned earlier, Cook Alliance over in SoCal, and their information is on our website. They do help with this part of the business because we're more on the regulatory side, and they're helping with the cost of the full cost of the home kitchen along with equipment, ingredients, marketing and all of that part. But we don't have that information readily.
And also, I think it might have been mentioned, but just to reiterate, there aren't any like grease trap or any sort of structural or equipment upgrades that are required as part of this. So whatever facilities or whatever equipment is already in the home, that's what's used. There is no requirements from our end that somebody has to use to put forth.
All right, and again, their contact information is on the front on the slide, and for our viewing audience, I'm sure you'll be getting some contact follow-ups on that also. But I want to definitely thank you all for coming out and sharing information. It's really exciting, and glad we could provide a venue for you to share this special programming, and look forward to continued partnership as well.
Thank you.
No, ma'am. Thank you.